A mistaken identity. Captain Dana Wells had always stood out, not just for her striking presence, but for her unwavering dedication to her role as a police officer. From her first day in uniform, she understood the unique challenges that came with being a black woman in law enforcement. The road to success was not just about proving her competence. It was about overcoming the biases that shadowed her at every turn. As she climbed the ranks, rising to captain through sheer determination and integrity, she learned to navigate the complexities of her position with grace. On this particular evening, Dana was savoring a rare moment of normalcy. It was a beautiful dusk, the kind that painted the city in deep hues of purple and orange. As she walked through the aisles of her local grocery store, she felt like just another citizen enjoying life, far removed from the pressures of her badge and the weight of responsibility. The store was filled with the gentle hum of conversation, punctuated by the soft sounds of shopping carts rolling on the tiled floor. Dana relished these moments. She picked up a fresh loaf of sourdough bread, imagining the dinner she had planned. With her badge and gun tucked away in her purse, she felt a sense of freedom, a fleeting escape from her identity as an officer. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, but it only added to the ambience of her mundane yet comforting experience. She was blending in, enjoying the anonymity of being just Dana Wells, a woman preparing a meal, instead of Captain Wells, a figure of authority. As she approached the checkout line, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from her partner, Michael, inquiring about her whereabouts. With a quick tap, she replied, "On my way home, just grabbing groceries. See you in 10. The message felt routine, just like the evening. Meanwhile, Officer Greg Mathers was on duty, waiting for something exciting to happen. The day had been uneventful, and he found himself fidgeting in his squad car, craving action. When the dispatch crackled to life, announcing a robbery suspect fitting a description he could not ignore, his heart raced with anticipation. Black female, mid-30s, wearing dark jeans and a gray sweatshirt, the dispatcher said. This was the moment he had been waiting for, an opportunity to be a hero, to make a difference. As he drove towards 5th and Maple, Greg's mind replayed the description. The adrenaline surged through him, fueling his instincts. He had to act fast. This was his chance. Turning sharply onto Maple, he scanned the streets, his eyes darting between pedestrians and parked cars, searching for anyone who matched the description. And then he saw her. Dana was walking calmly, groceries in hand, unaware that she had just become the target of a mistaken identity. Greg's pulse quickened. She fit the description perfectly. Without a second thought, he pulled over, heart pounding in his chest, his instincts urging him to take immediate action. "Ma'am, stop right there," he shouted, the authoritative command echoing off the surrounding buildings. Dana halted abruptly, the confusion washing over her. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, maintaining a calm demeanor despite the rising tension. The glow of the headlights from Greg's cruiser created an almost theatrical spotlight on her, amplifying the surreal nature of the moment. She hadn't done anything wrong. This had to be a mistake. However, Greg was not prepared to listen. He had made up his mind, driven by the adrenaline and urgency of the moment. "Step away from the groceries and put your hands where I can see them." His voice was firm, lacking any trace of doubt. To him, this was a criminal, and he had to take control of the situation. Dana's mind raced as she processed the officer's demands. This wasn't just a random encounter. This was an escalation of misunderstanding that could spiral out of control. "I'm an officer too," she said, her voice steady. "I'm Captain Dana Wells. I'm off duty." But Greg's focus was singular. The description echoed in his mind, and he felt the pressure to act decisively. "You matched the suspect's description exactly," he insisted, frustration creeping into his tone. "I need you to comply." The streets were quiet, the tension palpable. Onlookers began to gather, curious about the scene unfolding before them. Dana could feel their eyes on her, the weight of judgment mixed with confusion. She took a deep breath, drawing upon the many crisis situations she had navigated as an officer. Staying calm was essential, not just for her safety, but also to defuse the potentially explosive situation. "I understand, officer," she replied, her voice calm but firm. "But you have to believe me. I'm not the suspect. Please check my ID. You'll see I'm telling the truth." But Greg's adrenaline was blinding. The voices in his head screamed for him to maintain control. He approached her cautiously, keeping a safe distance, his hand hovering over his sidearm. "Turn around slowly and put your hands behind your back," he commanded, his gaze unwavering. Dana's heart sank. This wasn't how she imagined her evening would end. She complied, placing her hands behind her back, feeling the cold grip of the handcuffs as they clicked into place. "You're making a mistake," she stated, her voice steadier than she felt inside. "I'm not a criminal." Yet the more she pleaded, the more resolute Greg became, blinded by his assumptions and the rush of the moment. He called in for backup, his radio crackling to life as he reported the arrest. "Unit 34, I've apprehended a suspect matching the description. Black female, mid-30s, dark jeans, gray sweatshirt. I need assistance on the scene." As she stood there, the reality of her situation began to sink in. Passers-by watched with a mix of concern and disbelief, and Dana couldn't help but feel a sense of injustice wash over her. Here she was, a respected captain being treated like a criminal, and all because of the color of her skin and a coincidence in attire. In the distance, she could hear the sirens approaching, but it was not just the sound of police backup. It was the sound of her life turning upside down. With each passing moment, the disbelief and shock of the situation deepened. Dana knew the importance of this moment, not just for her but for her community. It was a stark reminder of the prejudices that still existed, even within the very institution she served. As the backup units arrived, the scene became even more chaotic. Officers stepped out, confusion etched on their faces as they took in the sight before them. Dana could see their eyes widen in recognition, the realization that they were dealing with one of their own. "Captain Wells," one of the officers asked, taking a hesitant step forward. "Yes, it's me," she replied, her voice strained yet authoritative. "I'm being arrested by mistake." The confusion rippled through the ranks of officers. They knew Dana, respected her, and understood the implications of what was happening. As they began to process the situation, Dana's mind raced with thoughts of the implications, the conversations that would follow, and the impact this incident would have not just on her, but on the entire department. "Officer Mathers, what's going on?" another officer questioned, breaking through the tension. Greg stood there, his heart pounding, feeling the weight of their gazes. "I was just following protocol," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. She matched the description. "I had to act." The officers exchanged glances, the realization of the gravity of the mistake settling in. Captain Wells was not just a colleague. She was a leader, a symbol of progress within the department. This moment could unravel all the work they had done to build trust within the community. As Dana's handcuffs were removed, she stood tall, ready to confront the reality of what had just transpired. The evening sky was fading into darkness, but Dana's resolve burned brightly. This was not just about her. It was about every person who had ever faced prejudice or been misunderstood. It was a moment that demanded change, a call to action that resonated deep within her. As the officers worked to de-escalate the situation, Dana took a deep breath, determined to turn this shocking incident into a catalyst for change. She would not allow this moment to define her. Instead, she would use it as a platform to advocate for understanding and unity within the community and the police force. Little did she know that this incident would spark a series of events that would challenge the very fabric of the department and the community it served, forcing everyone to confront their biases and reevaluate what it meant to protect and serve. The fallout. The tension in the air was thick as Captain Dana Wells stood surrounded by her fellow officers, the realization of the mistake sinking in like a stone in her stomach. The flashing lights of the patrol cars illuminated the street, casting a surreal glow over the scene that had turned her ordinary evening into a night of chaos. The onlookers, bystanders who had paused to witness the unfolding drama, whispered among themselves, their expressions a mix of disbelief and curiosity. As the last of the cuffs clicked open, Dana straightened her posture, taking the moment to steady her breathing. She could feel the weight of the world on her shoulders. "I need to speak with you all," she said, her voice firm, demanding their attention. The crowd quieted, the murmurs dying down as she stepped forward. "This isn't just about me. This is about the trust between our department and the community we serve." Officer Greg Mathers stood at a distance, his heart racing as he processed the gravity of what he had done. He had acted instinctively, driven by the need for action, yet the ramifications of his choices were crashing down on him like a tidal wave. As Dana's words echoed in the air, he felt a knot of guilt tightening in his chest. "Captain, he began, but Dana cut him off, holding up a hand. "No, Greg, this isn't just a mistake. It's a reflection of the biases we all carry, whether we realize it or not. You didn't see me as a fellow officer. You saw me as a suspect, and that is the problem." The officer shifted uneasily, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the cool evening air. Dana's words were not just directed at Greg. They were a challenge to everyone present, a call to examine their own prejudices and assumptions. "I've worked hard to earn my place in this department. I've fought against the narrative that says I don't belong here. We need to do better. We must do better." As Dana spoke, the officers around her began to exchange glances, their expressions shifting from shock to contemplation. She could see the wheels turning in their minds, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a glimmer of hope. Perhaps this incident could be a catalyst for change, a turning point in their approach to policing and community relations. Meanwhile, the bystanders who had gathered began to take out their phones, capturing the moment, the irony not lost on Dana. The arrest of a black police captain was newsworthy, and she could only imagine the headlines that would follow. As much as she wanted to hide from the scrutiny, she realized that this was an opportunity to raise awareness about the systemic issues in law enforcement. The crowd started to disperse as the reality of the situation sunk in, but Dana remained. The police department had protocols for addressing complaints and mistakes, but the internal processes often felt hollow without accountability and transparency. She knew she needed to address this openly, not just for herself, but for the entire department and the community they served. As the initial shock of the situation began to fade, Dana called for a community meeting at the police station. "We need to have an open dialogue," she declared. "We can't ignore what happened tonight. We have to discuss the biases that influenced this situation, the impact it has on our relationship with the community, and how we can move forward." Over the next few days, the incident began to make headlines. The media coverage was relentless, scrutinizing every detail of what had occurred. Headlines like "Mistaken Identity," "Black Police Captain Arrested by Fellow Officer" dominated the news, igniting conversations across the city. The public was divided. Some expressed outrage, while others called for accountability and reform within the police force. Internally, the department faced its own set of challenges. Dana found herself at the center of a whirlwind of conversations, both supportive and critical. Some officers approached her with empathy, acknowledging the mistakes and vowing to support her in initiating change. Others, however, were defensive, unwilling to confront the biases that had led to the incident. During a department meeting, the atmosphere was charged. Dana took her place at the front of the room, her presence commanding despite the lingering tension. She addressed her colleagues, her voice steady. "We have to be honest with ourselves. This isn't just about one mistake. It's about a pattern of behavior that can't continue. We need to create a culture where we see each other as people first, not just as roles or labels." As she spoke, she noticed Greg seated at the back of the room, visibly uncomfortable. He had spent the past few days grappling with his actions, replaying the events in his mind, and he felt the weight of the shame and embarrassment. He had joined the force to protect and serve, yet in that moment, he had done the opposite. After the meeting, Dana approached Greg, her heart heavy with understanding. "I know this is difficult for you," she said softly. "But it's crucial that we learn from this. We can't allow our assumptions to cloud our judgment." Greg looked up, shame etched on his face. "I know I messed up, Captain. I didn't see you. I just saw a suspect. I was so caught up in the moment that I didn't think." Dana nodded, recognizing the struggle in his eyes. "That's what we need to address. Those instincts that lead us to make snap judgments based on appearances. We need training that focuses on implicit bias, on seeing the humanity in each other." Over the following weeks, the police department initiated a series of workshops focused on racial bias and community relations. Dana took the lead, leveraging her position to bring in experts who could guide the officers through difficult conversations and training. The sessions were often uncomfortable, but they were necessary. Why is this important? Dana posed during one session. Because we have the power to change lives, to impact our community positively. But we must first confront our biases and the systemic issues within our own department. As the workshops progressed, Greg began to find his voice. He shared his experience and his mistakes, using them as a teaching moment. "I thought I was doing my job, but I let my biases dictate my actions," he admitted. "I realized that if we're going to build trust, we have to be accountable for our actions, no matter how uncomfortable it might be." The dialogue sparked a newfound commitment among the officers. They began to engage in discussions about their roles and responsibilities, pushing past their discomfort to foster understanding. For Dana, it was both a relief and a challenge. She was navigating uncharted waters, trying to foster an environment of growth amidst the backdrop of scrutiny from the public and the media. As the months passed, the department's initiatives gained traction. The community meetings that Dana organized became a platform for open dialogue between residents and officers. People shared their experiences, their fears, and their hopes for a better relationship with the police. "I used to see the police as a threat," one community member shared during a meeting. "But now, I'm starting to see the individuals behind the badge. It's about understanding each other." Dana found hope in those conversations. It was a slow process, but change was happening. Each meeting fostered a deeper connection, and the walls of distrust that had been built over years were slowly starting to crumble. However, not everyone was on board with the changes. Within the department, a faction of officers resisted the training and dialogue, preferring to maintain the status quo. Rumblings of dissent began to surface, with some officers questioning the need for such initiatives. "We're cops. We should be focusing on policing, not having touchy-feely discussions," one officer remarked during a break. Dana was aware that this resistance existed, but she remained steadfast in her mission. "We can't afford to ignore these conversations," she responded firmly. "If we want to build trust and improve our relationships with the community, we need to be willing to change." The battle for reform within the department was ongoing. Dana faced pressure from both sides, those who supported her initiatives and those who wanted to maintain traditional policing methods. The challenges felt overwhelming at times, but she remained focused on the bigger picture. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day filled with meetings and discussions, Dana returned home to find Michael waiting for her. He could see the weariness etched on her face. "You're doing an incredible job. You know that," he said, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. "Thanks," Dana replied, leaning into him. "But some days, it feels like I'm fighting an uphill battle." Michael brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his gaze steady. "Change takes time, but you're planting the seeds. You're making a difference, Dana." As they sat down for dinner, Dana reflected on the journey so far. She had faced the fallout of that fateful evening head-on, using it as a springboard for discussions about race, bias, and accountability. It was a challenging path, but Dana was determined to see it through, not just for herself, but for every officer who came after her. The sun dipped below the horizon, and as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Dana felt a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that real change was not just about the policies and procedures they enacted. It was about changing hearts and minds, one conversation at a time. As she tucked into her meal, she realized that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she was ready to face them. She was not just a captain. She was a leader, a voice for change, and she would not stop until the community and the police department stood united in understanding and respect. A community divided. The weeks rolled on, and as Captain Dana Wells continued her mission for change within the police department, the atmosphere in the community remained tense. The incident that had thrust her into the spotlight had reignited conversations about race, policing, and the systemic issues that plagued their city. While many embraced the call for reform, others resisted, creating a palpable divide. At the heart of this divide was the local community center, which became a battleground for differing opinions. Dana had organized community forums to foster dialogue between police officers and residents, inviting everyone to share their experiences and perspectives. The center buzzed with activity, but the conversations often escalated into heated debates. During one of the forums, Dana stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding as she prepared to moderate the discussion. "Thank you all for coming," she said, scanning the room filled with community members and officers. "Tonight, we're here to listen to each other and work towards understanding. This isn't about placing blame. It's about finding common ground." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, while others crossed their arms defensively. A resident named Marcus, a local activist known for his outspokenness, was the first to raise his hand. "Captain Wells, we appreciate your efforts, but how can we trust a system that has historically failed us? You say you want to listen, but what actions will follow this talk?" Dana recognized the frustration in his voice. "I understand, Marcus. Trust is earned, and it takes time. We're committed to making changes, starting with training on implicit bias and community engagement. We want to build a police force that reflects the community it serves." Another voice chimed in from the back. "But how can we be sure it's not just lip service? We've seen promises made before, and nothing changes." As Dana navigated the tense atmosphere, she could feel the weight of the community's skepticism pressing down on her. She had entered this role with the desire to make a difference, yet now she was faced with the reality of a community divided. She knew she had to tread carefully, ensuring that her words and actions resonated with both officers and residents. The forum continued, with various perspectives emerging. Some community members expressed hope, eager to see the changes Dana was championing. Others, however, remained unconvinced, voicing their fears and frustrations. The conversations were raw, unfiltered, and often emotionally charged. After the forum, as people filtered out of the community center, Dana lingered, hoping to connect with those who had expressed their concerns. She found Marcus standing near the exit, his expression a mix of determination and skepticism. "Marcus, can we talk?" she asked, approaching him with genuine intent. He hesitated but then nodded. "Sure, Captain. I appreciate that you're here to listen." They stepped outside into the cool evening air, the stars twinkling above. "I understand your doubts," Dana began, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not here to promise quick fixes. Change takes time, and I want to be transparent about the process." Marcus studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "It's hard to believe that when we've been let down so many times before. How do I know this isn't just another program that will fizzle out? I can't give you guarantees, but I'm committed to accountability," she replied earnestly. "We're developing a system for community oversight, where residents can voice their concerns about police practices. Your feedback is crucial in shaping our approach." He considered her words, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "That sounds promising, but I'll believe it when I see it. We need to be involved every step of the way." "Absolutely," Dana affirmed, grateful for his willingness to engage. "I want to ensure that our community feels empowered to participate in these discussions. Your voice matters, and I hope we can work together to bridge this divide." As they continued talking, Dana felt a glimmer of hope. It was conversations like these that could pave the way for meaningful change. However, she was also acutely aware of the resistance within her department, particularly from officers who viewed her initiatives as unnecessary or overly politically correct. That evening, Dana returned home, her mind racing with the discussions and debates she had facilitated. Michael noticed the furrow in her brow as she prepared dinner. "How did it go?" he asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. "Mixed," she replied, stirring the pot on the stove. "There's a lot of skepticism in the community, and I can't blame them. They've been let down too many times." Michael nodded, his expression serious. "But you're doing the right thing. Change won't happen overnight, but you're planting the seeds." Dana appreciated his support, but her heart still felt heavy. The following days saw more forums and meetings, each one a blend of hope and frustration. Some residents expressed their eagerness to collaborate, while others remained steadfast in their belief that real change was impossible. One particular meeting stood out. Dana had invited a local journalist, Jessica, known for her advocacy in community issues, to help facilitate the discussion. Jessica's presence attracted a larger crowd, and tensions ran high as differing perspectives collided. During the forum, Dana introduced Jessica, hoping her insights would help bridge the gap. "I believe that media plays a vital role in shaping narratives," Dana stated, looking around the room. "Jessica, can you share your perspective on how we can improve our relationship with the community?" Jessica stood up, her voice steady. "As a journalist, I've seen the power of storytelling. But I've also witnessed the damage that can occur when stories are one-sided. It's crucial for us to share our experiences honestly, both the successes and the failures." A community member interjected, "But how do we know the police won't just control the narrative? We need transparency." Dana felt the urgency in the air, the need for clarity. "I want to ensure our interactions are transparent. We're working on implementing regular community reports to highlight both our progress and our challenges. We need accountability from both sides." The discussion continued, with voices rising and falling as people shared their stories, their frustrations, and their hopes. It was raw and unfiltered, but amidst the chaos, Dana saw the potential for growth. Each voice added a layer to the complex tapestry of their community, and she was determined to weave those threads together. As the meeting wrapped up, Dana noticed Greg sitting quietly at the back, his expression contemplative. After the crowd dispersed, she approached him. "You've been pretty quiet tonight," she noted. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier about accountability. It's easy to talk about change, but actually doing it is another story." "I get it," Dana replied, her voice gentle. "It's uncomfortable, and it requires vulnerability. But we can't afford to ignore the issues any longer. We need to create an environment where officers feel safe to speak up too." His gaze met hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. "I want to help, but I don't know where to start." "Start by listening," she suggested. "Engage in these discussions, even if it's uncomfortable. We need to work together to build trust, both internally and with the community." Greg nodded, a newfound determination forming in his expression. "I'll do that. I want to be part of the change." As Dana returned home that night, she felt a sense of optimism creeping in. Change was slow, and it was fraught with challenges, but she could see glimmers of hope on the horizon. The discussions she had initiated were starting to have an impact, and the community was beginning to rally around the idea of collaboration. Yet, she was also aware that not everyone in the department was on board with her vision. Some officers still viewed her initiatives as a threat to their authority, and Dana knew that the journey ahead would be filled with obstacles. The following week, she was scheduled to speak at a local community event designed to celebrate unity and collaboration. It was a chance to reinforce the message of understanding and healing, but she felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her. On the day of the event, as Dana stood in front of a crowd of community members and officers, she took a deep breath, ready to share her vision for the future. Today, we stand at a crossroads, she began, her voice strong and steady. We can choose to let fear and division dictate our actions, or we can come together to forge a new path. The crowd listened intently, and she could feel their energy shifting. I believe in the power of dialogue, of listening to one another, and working together to create a safer and more inclusive community. But this can only happen if we're willing to confront our biases and acknowledge our shortcomings. As she spoke, Dana noticed a mix of expressions in the crowd, some hopeful, others skeptical. But she refused to be deterred. This was her moment to advocate for change, to inspire others to join her in the fight for justice and understanding. After her speech, attendees began to engage with one another, sharing their experiences and ideas. It was a promising start, and Dana felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, in the back of her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that the road ahead would still be filled with challenges, and she would need to be prepared to face them head-on. As the event came to a close, Dana received a text message from Marcus, inviting her to a community meeting later that week. "We want to discuss next steps," he wrote. "Your input is invaluable." She quickly replied, accepting the invitation with gratitude. The opportunity to engage further with the community filled her with hope. Dana knew that every conversation, every interaction, brought them one step closer to healing the divisions that had plagued their city for far too long. And as she walked home that evening, she felt the weight of responsibility, but also a glimmer of hope for what lay ahead. The fight for justice and equality would be long and arduous, but she was determined to navigate it with grace and resilience. Bridging the divide. As the days turned into weeks, the movement for change within the police department gained momentum, but Dana Wells knew that progress often came with its own set of challenges. The community meetings were a valuable platform for dialogue, yet the conversations frequently revealed deep-seated frustrations and mistrust. Each encounter served as both a reminder of the obstacles ahead and an opportunity for growth. The upcoming meeting with Marcus and other community leaders loomed in her mind. They planned to discuss actionable steps for further collaboration between the police and the community. As Dana prepared her notes, she felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was an opportunity to solidify the foundation they had built through the forums and discussions, but she also knew that expectations were high. On the night of the meeting, the community center buzzed with energy. Chairs filled quickly as residents and officers alike gathered, eager to contribute to the conversation. Dana arrived early, taking a moment to breathe deeply, grounding herself in her purpose. She wanted to foster an environment of openness, a safe space where everyone felt heard. Marcus greeted her at the door, his expression serious but determined. "Thanks for coming, Captain. I know the community is counting on us to make real changes," he said, his voice steady. "I'm grateful for your leadership, Marcus," Dana replied, returning his sincerity. "Let's make this a productive evening." As the meeting commenced, Dana stood at the front, addressing the group. "Thank you all for being here. Tonight, we're here to discuss not just the challenges we face, but the actionable steps we can take to bridge the divide between our community and the police department." She noticed the diverse group in attendance: young people, parents, elders, and officers, all representing different facets of the community. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of hope and skepticism. "Let's start by sharing what we believe the community needs from us as officers," she suggested, inviting everyone to contribute. One young woman, Leah, stood up, her voice unwavering. "We need officers to understand our neighborhoods, not just patrol them. Get to know us, our concerns, and the issues we face every day." Dana nodded, recognizing the truth in her words. "That's essential. Building relationships is key. We're not here to be an occupying force. We're here to serve and protect. We need to earn your trust." Another voice chimed in from the back, a middle-aged man named Robert, who had been vocal in previous meetings. "You talk about building trust, but what does that look like in practice? How can we be sure this isn't just a facade?" "Trust is built through consistency and transparency," Dana responded, her voice steady. We can implement community policing strategies that focus on collaboration. That means involving residents in decision-making processes, not just showing up when there's a problem. The room began to buzz with conversations as attendees discussed the feasibility of her ideas. While some expressed enthusiasm, others remained skeptical, voicing their concerns about the historical relationship between the police and the community. Marcus stood up again, pushing back gently but firmly. What happens when an officer steps out of line? How will accountability be handled? We've seen too many instances where misconduct goes unchecked. Dana took a breath, ready to address the difficult subject head-on. Accountability is critical. We need to create a system where officers are held responsible for their actions. That includes internal reviews, community oversight, and transparency in disciplinary measures. The discussion continued, moving between excitement and frustration, ideas and doubts. As Dana listened, she noticed a recurring theme: the desire for connection. The community wanted to feel valued and heard, and the officers needed to understand that their role extended beyond law enforcement to being active participants in the lives of the people they served. As the meeting wound down, Dana felt a sense of purpose. They had laid the groundwork for a more collaborative relationship, but it was clear that trust would take time to cultivate. The dialogue sparked enthusiasm and renewed commitment among many, but skepticism lingered among others. "Let's make a plan for our next steps," Dana suggested. "I propose that we create community advisory boards to facilitate ongoing dialogue and input from residents. These boards can help shape our policies and practices, ensuring that the community has a voice in decision-making." The idea resonated with many in the room. They began to discuss potential members for the advisory boards, emphasizing the importance of diversity in representation. Dana felt a rush of hope. They were moving beyond mere words into action. As people began to disperse, Lee approached Dana, her expression thoughtful. "I really appreciate your openness tonight. It's refreshing to see an officer willing to listen. But I hope this doesn't stop here." "It won't," Dana assured her, her resolve unwavering. "This is just the beginning. We're in this together, and your voice is essential to making lasting change." As Dana drove home that night, she reflected on the progress they had made. The discussions were messy and complex, but they were a necessary step toward healing. However, she was also keenly aware that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, particularly from within the department. The next day, Dana received an email from her chief, requesting a meeting to discuss the recent community forums and the proposed advisory boards. She felt a flutter of anxiety. She knew that not all officers shared her enthusiasm for change. As she prepared for the meeting, she considered the opposition she might face. Some of her colleagues viewed her initiatives as a threat to their authority, believing that community engagement undermined their role as law enforcement. Yet Dana was resolute. She believed that fostering trust and understanding was essential to effective policing. The meeting began with the chief outlining the department's recent efforts to improve community relations. "We've seen an uptick in engagement, which is promising," he said. "But I want to ensure that our officers feel supported in these changes." As Dana listened, she felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The chief's support could be pivotal, but she knew that the resistance she faced within the ranks was real. After he finished his initial remarks, she took the opportunity to present her proposal for community advisory boards. "Chief, I believe that establishing these boards will create a vital link between the community and our department," she began, her voice steady. "They will help us address concerns directly and ensure that we are held accountable." The chief nodded, but she could see a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "I understand the intent behind this, but we need to be cautious. There are officers who feel that this could undermine our authority." "Chief, I believe it's crucial that we acknowledge the community's voice," Dana pressed. "If we want to build trust, we need to show that we're willing to listen and adapt. This isn't about undermining authority. It's about enhancing our ability to serve effectively." The discussion continued, and while some officers expressed support, Others voiced their concerns about the potential consequences of increased scrutiny. Dana felt the weight of their skepticism, but she remained resolute, determined to advocate for the community's needs. "I want to assure you all that our goal is to improve our relationship with the community," she stated, her voice firm. "This isn't just a box to check. It's an essential step towards accountability and transparency." As the meeting concluded, Dana felt a mixture of relief and frustration. While she had garnered some support, the resistance within the department was still palpable. Change was a slow process, but she was committed to seeing it through. In the following weeks, Dana continued to push for the advisory boards. She worked tirelessly, meeting with community leaders and officers to build a coalition of support. However, the pushback from some colleagues was disheartening. Whispers of dissent began to circulate within the department, and Dana could feel the pressure mounting. One evening, as she was leaving the station, she overheard a conversation between two officers. "I don't know what Wells is thinking," one said, scoffing. "This community stuff is just a distraction from real policing." Dana felt a pang of disappointment. She had hoped for a more united front, but the road ahead seemed more daunting than ever. Despite the challenges, she refused to give up. She organized a series of workshops focused on community engagement, inviting officers to participate and share their experiences. At one of these workshops, Dana facilitated a discussion on the importance of understanding community dynamics. "We need to recognize that our role is not just to enforce the law but to build relationships," she explained to her colleagues. "Understanding the needs of the community helps us do our jobs more effectively." Some officers remained skeptical, but others began to engage, sharing their own experiences and frustrations. One officer, a veteran named Carla, spoke up. "I've been on this force long enough to see how important it is to connect with the community. We can't just show up when there's a crisis. We need to be involved in their lives." The dialogue shifted, and Dana felt a glimmer of hope. As officers began to share their thoughts and experiences, the walls of resistance started to crack. They were beginning to understand the value of community engagement, and it felt like a significant turning point. Weeks turned into months, and the advisory boards began to take shape. Dana worked diligently to ensure that they represented the diverse voices of the community. The first meeting of the boards was set, and she could hardly contain her excitement. This was the culmination of their hard work and dedication. On the night of the inaugural meeting, the atmosphere was electric. Community members and officers gathered in the same room, ready to share their hopes and concerns. Dana stood at the front, her heart racing with anticipation. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice ringing with enthusiasm. "Tonight marks the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. We're here to listen, learn, and work together to create a safer, more inclusive community." As the discussions unfolded, Dana felt a sense of unity forming in the room. Community members shared their experiences, highlighting the need for collaboration, while officers expressed their willingness to engage and understand the community's needs. In the midst of the dialogue, Dana noticed Greg sitting at the back, his expression contemplative. After the meeting, she approached him. "How are you feeling about everything?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I'm starting to see the value in this," he admitted. "I didn't realize how disconnected we had been. This is important work, Captain." Dana smiled, her heart swelling with hope. "It's just the beginning, Greg. Together, we can make a real difference." As the meeting wrapped up, Dana felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would still be challenging, but she was committed to forging a path toward healing and understanding. With each conversation, they were building bridges, one discussion at a time. As she left the community center that night, she looked up at the stars shining brightly in the sky. The journey had been long and filled with obstacles, but she knew that together, they could create a future grounded in trust, compassion, and understanding. The rising tide. The momentum for change in the police department was palpable as Captain Dana Wells embraced the challenges ahead. The formation of the community advisory boards marked a significant milestone, But Dana understood that building trust and fostering genuine relationships required ongoing effort. As the weeks progressed, the meetings became a platform for open dialogue, revealing both the hopes and frustrations of community members and officers alike. However, Dana was acutely aware that not everyone was on board with the changes. Tensions simmered within the department, particularly among those who felt threatened by her initiatives. Whispers of dissent grew louder, creating an undercurrent of resistance that threatened to undermine the progress they had made. But Dana was resolute. She believed in the power of dialogue and collaboration. On a crisp autumn evening, Dana prepared for the monthly meeting of the advisory board. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Residents and officers were eager to discuss the successes and challenges they had encountered since the boards were established. As she entered the community center, she was greeted by familiar faces, some filled with hope, others still skeptical. "Good evening, everyone," Dana called out, her voice carrying warmth. "Tonight, we'll reflect on our journey so far and discuss our next steps. Let's start by sharing any successes we've had in our neighborhoods since our last meeting." Leah stood up, her face brightening with enthusiasm. "Since we've started these conversations, I've noticed more officers walking through our community, not just responding to calls but engaging with residents. It feels like a step in the right direction." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Dana smiled, heartened by Leah's observation. "That's fantastic to hear. Building those relationships is crucial for creating a safer community." However, Robert raised his hand, his expression serious. "While I appreciate the effort, we still have a long way to go. There are still incidents happening that make us feel unsafe. We need to talk about how we can hold officers accountable when they overstep their boundaries." Dana nodded, acknowledging the gravity of his concerns. "Absolutely, Robert. Accountability is paramount. That's why we're working on implementing more transparent reporting mechanisms for police conduct. We need to ensure that all officers are held to the same standards." The discussion flowed back and forth, highlighting both progress and lingering challenges. As Dana facilitated the dialogue, she noticed Greg listening intently, his expression contemplative. He had been an active participant in the meetings, eager to understand the community's needs and concerns. After the meeting, Dana approached Greg, who stood by the refreshment table, a pensive look on his face. "You seem deep in thought," she remarked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "I am," he admitted. "I've been reflecting on what we discussed tonight, and it's clear we have a lot of work ahead. I want to be part of that change, but I'm not sure how to navigate the pushback from some of the guys in the department." Dana appreciated his honesty. "It's going to be a challenge, Greg, but I believe it starts with us. We need to model the change we want to see, even in the face of resistance. Let's talk to some of the other officers about these concerns. We need to create a culture of accountability and support." Over the next few weeks, Dana and Greg organized informal discussions among their colleagues, creating a safe space for officers to express their concerns and ideas. At first, the turnout was sparse, with many officers hesitant to engage openly. However, as word spread about the discussions, interest began to grow. One afternoon, they gathered in the break room, and Dana sensed a mix of apprehension and curiosity among the officers who had come. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her tone encouraging. "I want to emphasize that this is a space for open dialogue. We're here to listen to each other and address any concerns you may have." Officer Mike, a veteran known for his gruff demeanor, crossed his arms and spoke up. "I'm all for community engagement, but what about our safety? We can't be soft on crime. If we're focusing on building relationships, how do we maintain order?" Dana recognized the underlying fear in his words. "That's a valid concern, Mike. Building relationships doesn't mean compromising safety. It means enhancing our effectiveness as officers. When we have trust in the community, people are more likely to cooperate with us. It's about finding that balance." Greg chimed in, supporting Dana's point. "If we can establish mutual respect and trust, we'll have the community on our side. which can lead to better outcomes for everyone. We're not abandoning our duty. We're evolving it. The room remained tense, but slowly more officers began to engage in the discussion, sharing their own concerns and insights. As Donna facilitated the conversation, she felt a glimmer of hope. They were beginning to bridge the divide between their roles as law enforcement and their responsibility to the community. However, not all discussions ended on a positive note. Tensions rose during one meeting when Officer Jack, known for his vocal skepticism, voiced his frustrations. "You all talk about accountability and community trust, but what about the risks? We're out there facing dangerous situations every day. Are we supposed to befriend everyone?" Dana met his gaze, determined to address his fears. It's not about being friend everyone. It's about building a rapport. Trust can lead to better intel and support when we need it. It's about creating allies, not just enforcing laws. Jack scoffed, shaking his head. "But what happens when we need to take action? You think a warm smile is going to protect us?" Greg interjected, sensing the tension escalating. "It's not just about smiles, Jack. It's about understanding the community's needs and working together to keep everyone safe, including us. If we create a partnership, we're better prepared to handle those situations." The discussion grew heated, but Dana remained calm, guiding the conversation back to constructive dialogue. "We're not here to undermine our safety. We're here to find ways to enhance it through community collaboration. Let's discuss specific scenarios where community engagement has made a difference in other cities." As the meeting progressed, they shared examples of successful community policing strategies from around the country, showcasing how collaboration had led to reduced crime rates and stronger relationships. Slowly but surely, the officers began to see the potential in Dana's vision. One evening, after a particularly intense meeting, Dana received a phone call from an unexpected source. Jessica, the journalist who had been following the developments within the police department. "Donna, I'd like to do a feature on the changes happening in your department. I think it's important for the community to see the progress you're making." "Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate your support," Donna replied, her mind racing with possibilities. "But I want to make sure we showcase the challenges too. It's crucial that we're transparent about the struggles we're facing." "I agree," Jessica responded. "This isn't just about the feel-good stories. It's about the real conversations that need to happen. I'll come to your next advisory board meeting and capture the discussions." As the days passed, anticipation built for Jessica's visit to the advisory board meeting. Dana wanted to present an authentic depiction of their journey, showcasing both the achievements and the challenges they faced. The night of the meeting arrived, and the room was buzzing with energy. Jessica arrived with her camera and notepad, ready to capture the discussions. Dana introduced her to the group, explaining the purpose of the meeting and encouraging open dialogue. "We're here to share our experiences and brainstorm ideas for further collaboration," she said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. The discussions flowed naturally, with community members and officers sharing stories of both successes and frustrations. Jessica moved through the room, capturing candid moments and listening intently to the conversations. However, as the meeting progressed, Dana noticed a tension brewing in the corner of the room. Officer Jack, seated among the officers, appeared restless. As a community member shared their experience with police interactions, Jack raised his hand, his frustration evident. "Let's be real," he said, his tone sharp. "We're not here to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Some people in this room still see us as the enemy. How do we deal with that?" The room fell silent, and Dana felt the weight of his words. She knew he was expressing a sentiment shared by many officers. "Jack, you're right. There are individuals who may not trust us, and that's a challenge we need to confront. But that doesn't mean we should back down from trying to change the narrative." Greg jumped in, trying to diffuse the tension. "We have to remember that change is gradual. We won't win everyone over immediately, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. It's about building a foundation of trust that can withstand challenges." Dana nodded, recognizing the importance of addressing Jack's concerns while also steering the conversation toward constructive solutions. Perhaps we can develop targeted outreach efforts in neighborhoods where trust is particularly low. Engaging with those residents directly can help us bridge that gap. The discussion shifted, with community members sharing ideas for outreach initiatives, from hosting local events to involving youth in mentorship programs. As they brainstormed, the atmosphere began to change, and the focus shifted from skepticism to collaboration. After the meeting, Jessica approached Dana, her expression thoughtful. "That was powerful, Dana. I think your department is making strides, but the skepticism is still palpable. How do you plan to address that?" Dana sighed, reflecting on the challenges they faced. "It's a delicate balance. We need to show consistency in our actions. Words are important, but they mean nothing without follow-through. I want to make sure we keep the lines of communication open, even when it gets tough." Jessica nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "I believe your approach is a step in the right direction. The community needs to see that you're committed to real change, not just a temporary fix." As Dana left the community center that evening, she felt a renewed sense of determination. The challenges ahead were daunting, but she was confident that they were on the right path. Change required patience and persistence, and she was ready to face whatever came next. In the days that followed, Dana continued to engage with both community members and officers, reinforcing the idea that they were in this together. The advisory boards became a space for brainstorming innovative solutions to address community concerns and improve police practices. Yet, as the weeks turned into months, the opposition within the department grew louder. Dana began receiving anonymous messages and derogatory comments during roll calls. The whispers of dissent threatened to undermine the progress they had made, and she felt the pressure mounting. One evening, as Dana prepared for bed, her phone buzzed with a message from Greg. "Can we talk tomorrow? I think we need to address the pushback we're facing." The next day, they met in her office, the tension in the air palpable. "I've heard some officers voicing their frustrations about the changes," Greg said, his expression serious. "I'm worried it's creating a divide within the department." Dana leaned back in her chair, absorbing his words. "I'm aware of the resistance. I've been hearing the comments too. But we can't allow fear to dictate our actions. We need to focus on our mission, building trust and improving relationships." "I agree, but we need a strategy to address the pushback," Greg replied, concern etched on his face. "If we don't confront it, it could derail everything we've worked for." Dana nodded, recognizing the urgency of the situation. "You're right. We need to hold a department-wide meeting to address these concerns openly. Let's create a space where officers can voice their frustrations and have a constructive discussion about the path forward." As they worked on organizing the meeting, Dana felt a renewed sense of purpose. Change was never easy, but she believed that fostering a culture of transparency and accountability was the only way to move forward. The challenges they faced were steep, but she was ready to climb that mountain, one step at a time.